Her scream had no sound left in it. The desert sun beat down on Evelyn's swollen belly as the ropes cut deeper into her wrist. Her skin was raw, her lips cracked. Yeah, and her legs shook under the weight of 8 months of carrying life inside her. Yet the man who should have protected her, the man who once swore to stand by her, stood only a few feet away watching her suffer. Carl spat into the dirt, his voice cold as iron. You think that child is mine? Everyone in town knows I can't sire a baby. The doctor himself said it after the horse threw me. You carry another man's seed, not mine. He turned his back as if she were no more than a broken animal tied to a post. Evelyn tried to speak, but her throat was sandpaper. She forced the words out, each one trembling. Please take them off. Please, Carl, I beg you. Her plea was met with silence. Carl leaned against the wooden rail of the corral, sipping from a tin cup, letting her roast under the punishing sky. Her body screamed for water. Her mind begged for mercy, but his eyes only showed contempt. This was not the first time. For months, the bruises had bloomed across her skin like cruel flowers hidden beneath her dress, so no one in town could see. But today, Carl had gone further. He wanted the whole world to witness her humiliation. He wanted to make her break. Evelyn's knees buckled and she collapsed against the post, her cheek pressing into the splintered wood. The rope burned as it tightened. She thought of the child inside her, still and silent, and fear stabbed her chest. If she gave up now, if her body failed, the baby would never see the light of day. A buzzard circled high above, black against the burning sky, as if waiting for her to stop moving. Evelyn tried to scream again, but her voice was gone. Only the whisper of desperation escaped. Please, someone, please. But there was no one. The ranch hands had long since left, unwilling to cross Carl's wrath. The neighbors stayed behind their fences, pretending not to hear. Everyone knew Carl was a dangerous man, short-tempered, quick with his fist, and now more paranoid than ever since the whispers about his injury spread through town. Men spoke of him in the saloon, mocking his weakness in hushed tones. Women avoided his gaze in church, and Evelyn carried the weight of his shame. The child she bore was not proof of betrayal, but to Carl, it was the mark of humiliation, so he punished her. The sun climbed higher, and Evelyn's vision blurred, her body begged for rest, but her spirit refused to surrender. She thought of her mother's voice, soft and steady, long ago, telling her that hope was the last thing a person should let go. She clung to that thought like a drowning soul to driftwood. Her wrists bled against the rope. Her belly shifted with the movement of the baby. A faint kick reminding her she was not alone. Tears blurred her sight as she whispered to the child, "Hold on, please hold on." Dust rose in the distance, hooves against the earth. A rider approached slowly, the outline of a man against the horizon. Evelyn blinked against the sun, her heart pounding with both terror and hope. Would it be another tormentor, another man who turned away? Or a hand willing to cut her free? Her lips moved through no sound came. "Please take them off." The rider drew closer, his shadow stretching long across the dirt, and for the first time that day, Carl shifted uneasily, his smug confidence flickering into something darker. Who was this man on horseback? And why did his presence make the cruel husband falter? If this stranger dared to interfere, would he have the strength to face a man like Carl? Or would Evelyn be left to die beneath the desert sun? The rider came closer, and now Evelyn could see his face through the haze. A man older, maybe near 60, with lines carved deep from years under the sun. His eyes were steady, not cruel like Carl's, but sharp like he had seen enough of life to know when something was wrong. Carl spat again, trying to look fearless, but there was a twitch in his jaw. "What do you want, old man? This is my wife, my land. Keep riding." The rider Thomas Grady did not keep riding. He swung down from his horse, boots sinking into the dry dirt, and then walked straight toward Evelyn. Carl moved fast, shoving him back. "Touch her and you'll regret it." Thomas did not flinch. Instead, he looked at Evelyn, saw the rope cutting her skin, saw the belly rising and falling with pain, and something cold flickered in his gaze. "Let her go," he said, calm but firm. Carl laughed, but it was the laugh of a man already unsure. "You think that child is mine? Everyone knows it ain't. The doc said I was finished after that horse crushed me. She's carrying another man's brat. That's what she is." The words hung in the air, heavy and cruel. Evelyn turned her face away, shame and tears mixing with dust. But Thomas did not look at her with judgment. He stepped closer. "You raise a hand to a woman carrying life. You stop being a man in my eyes." That was all it took. Carl lunged, fist swinging wild. The fight was quick but hard. Carl was younger, fueled by rage. But Thomas had fought before, in saloons, in barns, maybe even in wars no one spoke of anymore. Each blow he landed came with the weight of years, steady and sharp. Carl stumbled, tried again, but one final punch sent him sprawling into the dirt. Gasping, Thomas stood over him, chest heaving, but eyes steady. "You don't own her anymore. You never did." He cut the ropes, lifted Evelyn into his arms as if she weighed nothing, and carried her to his horse. Evelyn clung weakly to his shirt, the smell of leather and dust filling her lungs, and for the first time in months, she felt safe. Carl lay on the ground, cursing, but too broken to rise. Thomas swung into the saddle, holding Evelyn close. The horse took off, hooves pounding against the earth, leaving Carl behind in his own bitterness. At the ranch, Thomas laid her gently on a clean bed, fetched water, and wiped the blood from her wrists. "You're safe now," he said softly, though his voice still carried steel. Evelyn closed her eyes, but her mind replayed Carl's words. If Carl was right, if he truly could not father a child, then who would believe her? Would the town see her as a victim, or would they see her as a liar? And more than that, how long before Carl came back for her, for the first time in months? Evelyn slept without fear. The sheets smelled of soap. The room was quiet except for the creak of wood in the old ranch house. Thomas checked on her more than once that night, leaving water by the bed, keeping a lantern low in case she woke. By morning, color had returned to her cheeks. She whispered, "Thank you." Her voice still weak, but more alive than before. Thomas only nodded. "You're safe here. Rest. I'll ride into town for supplies." The old man saddled his horse and left for Dry Creek, thinking a few hours would do no harm, but safety in the West never lasted long. Carl had not disappeared. Bruised, bitter, and boiling with rage, he waited until Thomas was gone. He slipped onto the ranch like a rattlesnake in the grass. Evelyn was at the table sipping broth when the door swung open. Her heart dropped. Carl filled the doorway, eyes burning with fury. "You thought you could run from me. Thought an old fool could keep you safe." Evelyn tried to stand, but he struck her across the face, sending her crash into the floor. He grabbed her by the hair, yanking her toward the barn. "You're mine. Do you hear me? That bastard child won't save you." He dragged her into the empty stall, tying her hands once again. The same cruel knot as before. Dust filled the air. She hit the ground hard, her belly tightening with pain. Carl's madness showed in every word, every move. "You think the town will believe you? They all know. They all whisper. That baby isn't mine. You shamed me, Evelyn. Now you'll pay." She bit back a sob, praying Thomas would return, praying he had not gone too far. The barn grew silent except for the ragged sound of her breath. And for the second time, she wondered if this was the day she and her child would die. Out on the trail, Thomas felt uneasy. He could not explain why, but his gut told him something was wrong. The old man urged his horse faster, dust rising behind him, the ranch still miles away. And back in that barn, Evelyn whispered through the rope, "Please, God, send him back before it's too late. Now, here's the part where you might want to stick with us because what happens next will decide everything for Evelyn and her child. And if you enjoy these untold stories of the Wild West, make sure you hit subscribe so you never miss the next chapter. 'Cause in the very next part, Thomas returns to an empty house. And when he learns what Carl has done, he doesn't just ride back with his fist, and he rides back with a gun. The ranch house was empty when Thomas rode in. The chair was overturned, a bowl shattered on the floor, and the bed where Evelyn had been resting was cold. His gut twisted. He knew Carl had been here. Thomas stormed back outside, eyes scanning the ground. Fresh hoof prints cut through the dirt. He followed them fast, his horse pounding across the open field. The old man's jaw clenched tight. He prayed he was not too late. At the barn on Carl's property, Evelyn lay tied once again, face bruised. Dress torn, belly trembling with pain, Carl circled her like a vulture, muttering to himself, "You thought you could shame me. Thought you could hide behind him, but nobody takes what's mine." The door slammed open. Thomas filled the frame, his revolver steady in his hand. "Step away from her, Carl." For the first time, Carl hesitated. Thomas was no longer the tired rancher from the day before. There was fire in his eyes now, and his voice cut through the air like steel. "You've had your last chance," Carl sneered, but his swagger faltered. "You won't shoot me, old man. You ain't got it in you." Thomas cocked the gun. The sound echoed in the wooden walls. "Try me." Carl froze, sweat rolling down his temple. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears as she looked at Thomas. He moved slowly, keeping the revolver trained on Carl, and cut the ropes from Evelyn's wrists. She collapsed into his arms, her body shaking, but he held her steady. Then he turned the barrel back on Carl. "You're walking into town with me. The law will finish what I started." Thomas forced him outside, marched him down the dirt road with the revolver pressed against his back. By the time they reached Dry Creek, half the town had gathered. The sheriff stepped out of his office, hands resting on his belt, watching the scene unfold. Thomas shoved Carl forward, voice ringing loud. "This man beat his wife, nearly killed her and the child she carries. I won't see him walk free another day." The sheriff nodded, taking Carl by the arm. Evelyn stood in the crowd, her face pale, her hands resting on her belly. The whispers spread fast. Now everyone could see the truth with their own eyes. Carl was no victim. He was nothing but a cruel man who had finally met his reckoning. The sheriff snapped the cuffs closed, the iron clink loud enough for the whole town to hear. Carl shouted, cursed, but no one came to his side. He was finished. And yet, as the sheriff dragged him away, Evelyn felt a shiver run down her spine. Was this truly the end of her suffering? Or would Carl's shadow still haunt her even behind bars? The days that followed were quiet. Carl was gone, locked away by the sheriff, and the ranch finally breathed in peace. Evelyn healed slowly, her body scarred, but her spirit still burning strong. Thomas stayed by her side, not asking questions, not demanding answers, is simply offering what she had been denied for so long. Kindness, patience, a safe place to rest. The nights were long, and sometimes fear still woke her. But every time she opened her eyes, Thomas was there, sitting in the chair by the bed, head resting on his knee, waiting. Weeks passed, and one stormy evening, Evelyn clutched her belly, the pains of labor surging through her. Thomas rushed to her side, his old hands trembling, but steady enough to help. Through hours of cries and sweat, the storm outside roared, and at last, a baby's cry filled the little ranch house. A boy, red-faced and strong. Thomas held him for the first time, his rough hands cradling something so small, and his eyes watered like he'd been given a second chance at life. "He's mine," Thomas whispered. "Just as you are," Evelyn smiled through tears. And in that moment, the ranch was no longer just a lonely stretch of land. It was a home, and in the West, a home meant everything. Now, here's where the lesson shines through. Cruelty may last for a season, but it cannot outlive kindness. Violence may try to rule, but it cannot defeat steady love. The West was full of men like Carl, but it also had men like Thomas, who reminded us that true strength is not in fist, but in how you protect those who cannot fight for themselves. And here's a question worth asking. If that child truly was not Carl's, does it matter? Does Evelyn still deserve the love of Thomas? A man who chose her and her baby not out of blood, but out of choice. What would you do if you were in his boots? If this story touched you, give it a like. It helps more people find these hidden tales of the Wild West. And if you want to hear more stories of love, justice, and redemption on the frontier, make sure you subscribe so you never miss the next ride with us. Because every ranch, every dusty trail, every broken heart out west carries another story waiting to be